Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the series. Of course, you know what to do. If you like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And with that, I am so excited to have one of my favorite bands in the world. They are back with their first new record in a little bit over a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hives, hello.
Hey, hello. Good to see you, man, and thanks for the praise.
Yeah, well, it's I meant it too. The world missed the Hives, at least new music from you guys. And I know you haven't totally gone away with the shows and everything, but this new record, The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons, it's so good. And I don't know, maybe it's just because we haven't heard you in a minute. Maybe it's because this is exactly what I needed to hear right now. But this has been such a shot of adrenaline to my ears. So first off, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's awfully nice of you. Yeah. And exactly what I think we tried to achieve. For the record to bypass the brain and go straight to the adrenal system.
You've done it well. So what does it mean though? I know there's been a lot of talk about it, but I think every band hits that point, maybe that, some extra time passes and it gets longer in between the albums. What starts ramping back up? What are the conversations that begin with this record that's like, my God, we have to have something new?
Well, I think we wanted something new the entire time. We didn't have something new, and that was depressing. But it was for millions of reasons just not possible, I guess. But yeah, it does feel that when we were younger, we saw other bands doing it, like famously, waiting for Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses or so. But we're only like a few years better than that now, which seems insane. Back then, it's like 13 years, that's like 5 whole band careers. But man, it goes by in a flash. Maybe Axel will agree.
Luckily, this is a lot better than Chinese Democracy, and I'm not even knocking that album. I'm just saying that this is.
I remember a few. I had its moments, I think. I think there's probably been 10 versions of it though, so maybe there was the sweet spot like a couple of years before we released it when it was really good.
Right. Well, that's always the thing though with making a record too. Is knowing where that sweet spot is. I mean, I think there was an interview with your producer Patrick Berger, who had just mentioned like there were lots and lots of demos, and you have to figure out which songs, and that seems like
it's definitely overcooked, maybe.
Well, I think that seems like a scary. I would think it's not scary, but like having to make those decisions when you've got lots of songs, to choose from. It's not like your first album, maybe, when you're like, all right, these are the songs. These are the songs. It's like suddenly it's like now you've owned your craft. Now you've been around a while. Now you know how to be a songwriter, and maybe you have 100 songs. How do you find the 12?
I mean, in the past, we never really had much extra. It was pretty much what was on the album was all that we had finished. But I guess this is different. And a lot of those, what he talks about, all those demos are not finished, but you got to figure out which ones to finish. But yeah, it's not. That has been part of the problem, I think.
Yeah, the songs have to kind of complement each other in a way that, that the record sort of travels in a way. It has to go from one type of song to another, and they all have to make up an album.
And kind of make each other better.
Yeah. If you pick the right ones, then you can make all the songs can, be slightly better just by the sequencing, really. And then the record will be, I don't know, kind of more rewarding to listen to anyway.
It just makes me wonder, are there those songs that are just so left field out there? It's like, that doesn't sound anything like this record.
There's probably songs there that don't sound anything, but I also think like, What Did I Ever Do to You kind of doesn't sound like the rest of the record, and that's one of the more out there things that existed in this whole kind of chunk of music, unorganized music that, later ended up in a funnel and ended up on the album.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's things going into it that didn't make it through the whole process.
Yeah, and I think maybe even songs that would be considered kind of left field would be, if you put them in the right sequence and they make up a great album, then it will sound cohesive regardless,
Right.
Like it was always meant to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling that you're going.
What did you all want this record then? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it just comes naturally, but at some point, once you start to kind of feel like what the record's going to be, do you then have that thought that what you want this record to sound like, what this record might represent? Because it's not only, the first record in maybe a decade, but this also lands on what's, I think, technically the 30th anniversary year as well. I mean, do you find that it gets to speak to that moments?
In a way, I guess. I mean, even if it's unintentional, it kind of does. Like, the album is kind of a celebration of like, life in a way, or like, that it feels like you said, like a shot of adrenaline. It's supposed to just kind of have this insane euphoric like feeling to it, and I guess that's like what we always were trying to do. So in that way, I think it celebrates the legacy of the band in a good way, that it's not like, oh, an adult kind of sentimental or looking back on the golden days record, which was it has to feel like now, I think, and that's what we always tried to make the music sound like.
Yeah, it's not really an anniversary record in any way. I mean, it's not an anniversary record celebrating the 30 year of existence, and it's not really an anniversary record celebrating 11 years since we made a record last. None of those things are. It's just the record. It's just a new record. So I mean, we wanted to come out with a record that's a complete banger. Come out of the gate running.
I also don't think we think that staying together for a long time is really a badge of honor in rock and roll. I mean, it's hard to do, but it doesn't mean that it's better. Rock and roll is like a weird thing where you can be the best at it when you've never done it before. There are like amateurs that make one song at 15 that's like almost better than anything we've done after 30 years of trying. So it doesn't, like, time in the game is not really, that doesn't decide how good it is at all. So we have to keep trying. We have to keep our tools sharp and feel excited about it. Otherwise, like, you can't just park yourself and just stay together for a long time. I don't think that counts really.
Yeah, making good records and touring is way more important. Being together in a ship band for 30 years is, I guess, less rewarding. But being in a good band is rewarding in itself.
I think that's why we don't want to celebrate anniversaries, because it's not like, that's not the point. Like, the point is not the time spent. Is it good or not?
Yeah, it's so funny how reverse it is. Like, if you're a plumber and you work for 30 years, you're a better plumber. But there's that idea that if you're a rock and roller for 30 years, that people tend to like your new music less for some reason, and I think there's a lot of psychology that goes into that too. But it is funny just how reverse it is. And Pelle, what's that quote that's floating around, that there's no maturity or any of that bullshit, because who the fuck wants mature rock and roll?
No, at least I don't. That's not what I think the Hives should be doing. I guess I like some mature rock and roll, as in like a Dire Straits, or I can get down with that. But there's enough of that, because rock and roll's been around for a long time. So there's a lot of mature rock and roll. I think what we were missing, was the kind of immature feeling of being a teenage idiot, kind of. And I think you still get to decide to do that even as you age. You can still keep a part of that in you, and I think that's good for you.
Yeah,
you got to be that person sometimes.
It's just at the crossroads. It's either or. Either you go down, immature rock and roll, or mature rock and roll.
It was just something that felt so depressing about the Hives coming back after 11 years, adults. It just felt like come back like parrots,
Right. Here's your mid-tempo acoustic record.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And also be like, here's what you shouldn't do, and like give people advice or whatever. You don't get smarter as you age, or you don't get wise. It's not, you might be wiser when you're 20 sometimes. It's the same thing. It's not linear like that.
Yeah. I think about a quote that Black Francis from the Pixies, Charles, what he used to say, because the Pixies,
his name is not Frank Black. Charles?
Black Francis. He's Frank Black when he's solo, and then he's Charles to his kids.
Oh,
so
okay.
I
didn't know that. I like that guy though.
But he would talk about how the people held the Pixies to that, their early years, that sound, and he goes, oh, it's almost like you have to try to make yourself sound like whatever you're doing was an accident, to appease people.
Yeah,
and I feel like that would become harder.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can have a moment of inspiration. Like it's hard to recreate. Like some shit just comes out good because that's what you happen to be doing that day. Like it's almost like wind. Like it was blown the right direction. It came out good, but that's harder to recreate or impossible. Just have to do it until it feels good or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I do want to bring up some of the songs, and it's interesting, just the beginning of the record, and maybe this is what you all are talking about, because when you sequence it and it becomes something that maybe it wasn't beforehand, but having Bogus Operandi going into Trapdoor Situation, it really sets up sort of a macabre beginning, which is a very funny macabre beginning, but there's a little bit of that darkness there, and so maybe that's it. What's the story you're telling?
They're telling different stories, the two different songs. But I guess like in a sequencing way, it felt a lot of Hives albums start out with a really short, intense song, and then we play like a hit, or what we consider a hit. Like this sounds like something people might like. And we have a few records where we swap it. So it like starts with the hit, and then the second one is like the insane, like nuts energy shot. But I love the way the album starts with that Bogus Operandi intro. Is amazing, I think. And that was not what it sounded like at all at the beginning. Like it took a lot of versions to get to just going bam. There were versions with drums and without and whatnot. Like it sounds simple, but it took us a long time to figure it out. But that was the coolest way to start the first record after 11 years. Just go bam with the distortion pedal.
It kind of starts with that feedback. You react to a feedback in guitar. That's how it starts, it just goes, and then it.
We don't have
hits.
And usually we don't have distortion on the guitars. It's pretty clean guitar sound, so they don't really feed back in a cool way. I don't know if this is getting too technical, but our guitar sounds usually just go wee, like a bad PA system. To get that smooth sort of wee heavy metal feedback, you got to get different amps and shit. Like we got a Marshall stack for the first time, I think, on a Hives record, or maybe not the first time. Yeah.
First time
with a cranked Marshall stack. It felt like, yeah, that's rock and roll. It's fun.
Well, at least the feeling of lyrics then reflected the idea of rock and roll, and it did. It's so fun, and that goes throughout the record. I mean, the bomb. You're listening to the bomb, and
that's not terribly mature, is it?
Well, that's it. I mean, not every song, and I'm not saying this does or doesn't have something to say, but it makes me think like not every song has to have something to say. Some songs might be just fun. Maybe that's one of them.
It kind of works like poetry sometimes. It's just the way the words make you feel in combination with the music. That is like the message. It's not literally like that guy's a bomb and he's also a bomb. Like it's not about how you feel listening to it. But weirdly, the bomb song, which sounds like, to me, it sounds like something somebody just came up with. We spent years on that thing. Yeah. There were a million versions of that too. It was like one of the hardest songs to get right. And it definitely doesn't seem like that. Like it doesn't sound like the Hives are spending their time wisely, exactly. But it is. It's important that song was like that and took all those turns, I guess.
That's interesting. And by the way, that line, which I bring up, I had to grab my phone because my wife and I now text the line to each other. Do I have that right? What don't you want to don't want to do?
I don't even know myself anymore. It was a lot of flipping back and forth. A lot of triple and quadruple negations.
Like how you pull that off live? Yeah, it's a tightrope.
We haven't tried yet. We'll see.
Speaking of, by the way, live, I want to quickly bring up as we're getting to the end here, because the shows have been selling out in like this record amount of time, and you all have this reputation, been called one of the greatest live bands in the world, that you continue to be. Hopefully that's, again, probably just something that comes natural, but knowing that you have that reputation, I don't know, are you allowed an off night? Is there a little bit of pressure?
No, we did some of our last couple of shows we played during a heat wave in Italy and Greece. And I don't know the commercial, but I guess 110-ish degrees in the shade or something. So it's like standing in a hairdryer in like a polyester suit and doing karate kicks and screaming. It's like, it feels like there almost might be a permanent problem with you after that. and we don't. I mean, we don't have another gear than full tilt. It just hurts differently at different times.
Well, just knowing what you guys still pull off, it is incredible. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that many bands are just doing what you guys still do out there. Do you still see? Do you guys watch live music? Do you see other bands?
Yeah, all the
days?
time. And I don't think anyone's doing what we're doing. And I think that might be a good idea on their part. But yeah, I see a lot of great live bands, but they're very. There was some band, the Drums. It's a band we met on tour in Australia. Like, we met them in South America, and I was eating breakfast, and one of the guys came up to me and was like, "Whatever it is you're doing, no one else is really doing that." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like a good place." But I think it's also because it's taken us a very long time to get good at it, and it's hard and it's weird, and it's not for everybody, I guess. But in our little niche thing, we're it, basically.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you guys do. I love this record. I'm hoping there's a trend. I was just thinking about the Death of Randy Fitzsimmons, and Blur just released the Ballad of Darren, and they don't have anything to do with each other. But then again, if that's a trend, with rock bands, I'm in for that as well. Something about those song titles.
Yeah, right.
But thank you guys for continuing to do what you do, and I so appreciate you taking the time to talk about it.
Thanks for noticing.
Thank you very much.
It means a lot, man. Thank you so much.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week, new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.